of Parliament get going on discussing making the end of people's lives a lot easier than mine has been. And please hurry up.
An emotional final plea to Canadian politicians from Susan Griffith, just hours before she died by doctor-assisted suicide in Switzerland. Griffith suffered from a rare disease. It robbed her of the ability to carry out most of her bodily functions. She made the journey across the ocean to end her own life because assisted suicide is illegal to do here in Canada. Griffiths and her supporters have waged a campaign to change that, and British Columbia and Quebec are already challenging the federal laws in court. And this has raised a lot of questions. Is it time for MPs to take on the emotionally charged debate? Should able-minded Canadians have the legal right to end their own life with the help of a doctor, or would rewriting existing laws set a dangerous precedent? Let's debate this in the foyer of the House of Commons. Shelley Glover is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Françoise Boivin is the NDP's Justice Critic. And Ralph Goodale is the Deputy Liberal Leader. Thanks all for being here.
You're welcome.
Shelley Glover, Susan Griffith's dying request was for MPs to reopen the debate for assisted suicide. I'm going to read just this quick note. She wrote, I would have much preferred to die in Canada, she writes. My request to you, MPs, my government, is to reconsider Canada's current position and work hard towards legalizing doctor-assisted suicide. Should it be legal here in Canada?
Well, we did have this debate, Evan, in 2010. I was in the House when this debate was preempted, of course, by a private member's bill. My heart goes out to the family of Mrs. Griffiths. Of course, you know, they're constituents of mine. She was a constituent of mine. And she's a brave woman who brought her personal life, out into the open to share. So we are having debate amongst us just by listening to her story. But in the House of Commons itself, I believe we've debated this and it's been put to rest. The majority of parliamentarians did vote against. I believe the laws we have do protect Canadians, and I think it's important to continue to connect vulnerable Canadians like the disabled, the elderly, seniors, and I think that's what the criminal code does, and I'm happy to keep it as it is.
All right, so you're happy to keep it as it is. Françoise Boivin, what about you? Susan Griffiths has a daughter who's talked about having a disabled son and saying two issues are completely different. Studies from Netherlands and Oregon, where it is legal, show that there's no risk to chronically ill or disabled people. Is it time to have this debate again?
I think we'll have no choice, to be quite frank. I think the government, en français, we'd say aveuglement volontaire, voluntarily blindness. I think they will have no choice once the final decision from BC, coming from BC, once Quebec moves into action of deciding not to criminalize assisted suicide with some boundaries. I think we will have no choice but to debate here. I don't really enter into the argument of Shelley concerning the fact that it's been debated. We have numerous bills in front of this House that have been debated so many times and that keeps coming back or whatever. I think that is not the real question. I think it is a real problem. I'm not sure where I stand, and I don't want to sound too much like a politician. That's not my forte usually. I like to have but this is it's not an easy question to answer. It's not an easy way to solve an easy situation to solve. But I strongly believe that it is the person's will that counts, and there's not much that we should. It's their right to die. It's their right to decide how they die. The problem is when it's somebody who cannot make the decision on their own, what can we do, and so on. I really encourage, I said that on your show before, I really encourage people to go read the report from Quebec Commission on the right to die in dignity. But I'm saying there's I've got all type of voices in my caucus also, right. But I think we're
So you want this debate? You think it's time for a debate?
I think we have no choice. Our constituents, our Canadian, there's people who are asking us to have the debate.
Ralph Goodale, the last time this issue was debated in the House, you voted against legalized assisted suicide. You hear what Françoise Boivin has said. Is it time to have this debate again in light of the Griffiths case?
Well, the discussion is obviously already going on. brought on by a number of tragic cases, together with the legal positions that have been taken in British Columbia and soon in Quebec. I think that will undoubtedly end up in the Supreme Court of Canada, and at that point, it may well be inevitable that a discussion will reoccur in Parliament. This is the kind of discussion that's tremendously emotional and personal. I think it cuts across all political lines. Politics just doesn't enter into this. As I recall the last debate, the very powerful representations that were made by or on behalf of disabled Canadians, on behalf of the elderly, on behalf of those with chronic diseases. They were very compelling in the evidence that they put before Parliament, as well as the discussion that we have not adequately had about services and support systems for the disabled and palliative care. All of that enters into this discussion. It's tremendously personal and emotional. But once the Supreme Court of Canada again pronounces on this subject matter, a public debate will probably be inevitable.
Let me get Shelley Glover in here. There's a fascinating element here. You've got Arthur Schaefer, the director for the Center for Applied Ethics at the University of Manitoba, writing an article this week stating, and he says, we know that physician-assisted suicide happens in Canada, but since it occurs in the dark with no safeguards, the risk of abuse is greater. Should the law be changed to make assisted suicide legal to protect people? I mean, this is the key question. Is there essentially an underground assisted suicide going on that laws have to basically regulate?
Well, it's unfortunate that we start to call into question the actions of our medical profession. When the Canadian Medical Association has been very clear about this, Evan, they do not support legal assisted suicides. In fact, they continue to say that euthanasia is not something that they want to see come about, and that it's not lawful in most countries. And I agree with them. And, you know, I have to say, Evan, we're not just parliamentarians here. This is a very personal and divisive issue. And many of us have experiences in our own families that help us to sometimes formulate our own opinions about these things. I have a daughter with brain cancer. She was given 12 years. She's in year 7. I wrestle with this every time it becomes something to debate in the public. I continue to pray for her. I continue to pray for miracles. I continue to support our medical profession and our researchers. And I hope one day, and I dream one day, that something is found to save her. And to not have that hope, I think it would be unfortunate. I believe we're doing the right thing. We're protecting Canadians against abuses by making sure it's prohibited.
All right. Our ballot box question, I'll just say, and I've run out of time, as the Supreme Courts in Quebec and BC are challenging the federal law, but you guys can't see it there in the House, but we've asked our audience, should assisted suicide be legal in Canada? Only about 400 people have weighed in, but over 90% of people are saying yes. You sense, and this is an incredibly difficult debate, and I realize, but you sense that people want this debate somehow.
Oh, they do.
I think maybe
really do.
The low number of people actually casting a vote may indicate how many Canadians are actually wrestling with this. A large number that aren't able to take a position and dial in a quick answer. It's a tremendously profound issue.
Can I add
It's
something
also,
about
if
Susan
you don't
Griffiths?
mind, just a sec. I do find that it's time for the debate. They're expecting us to show leadership in the matter, and people are really torn because everybody I talk to in my writing, they're torn between the respect of life, of living. You ask me, I want to live, and I cannot fathom that at one point in time I'd say I want to die, but at the same time I have my dad who died in '89, pretty much at the beginning of palliative care, and he was always saying to me, dignity, to die with dignity is so important. So I think we have to put aside our value judgmental and hear cases like the Griffith case, the Schmidt case.
I do want to add something about
I
the
got
Susan
about 10
Griffiths
seconds,
case.
Shelley Glover. Go ahead.
there are people from my community who came to me who are friends of Susan Griffiths who were asked to support her plight that this be reopened, and they asked me not to. It's a very difficult position.
Listen,
I agree with Ralph.
listen. There is no clear answer on this, but it is.
It's very
but
divisive.
now that debate is re-entered our dialogue, and I appreciate Shelley Glover, Françoise Boivin, and Ralph Goodale coming on to talk about it. I mean, this is one of those ones that there's no party lines on these ones. It's a very tricky issue, but I appreciate everyone weighing in on that.
Thank you.
And Evan, I think we can all work together to make sure that disability care and palliative care are as good as they can
Budget
possibly
2013.
All right.
It's a good
Okay,
plan.
now we're starting to sound like politicians.
All right.
Well, there's money for palliative care.
Thanks all three of you as the debate continues on that.